welcome to my new sewing space. I need to put a mic on the camera. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be making another Milkmaid dress, and I'm going to be recreating this dress that if you're on Pinterest you've probably seen on your feed at least 100 times, because I know I certainly have, and I figured it has haunted my feed long enough and I'm finally going to be recreating it today. So for the fabric, I'm going to use this really pretty rayon fabric that I got from Joann's, and I will link the same one that I bought in the description box. And for this project, you're probably going to want to buy 3 yards of this fabric because this dress is a little bit on the longer side and it also has sleeves. And if you want to use another fabric, you just want to get something pretty lightweight that has a nice drape to it for the long skirt. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, I am officially in Texas now. This is my new setup for the time being, and I'm not quite moved in yet, so I am doing my best. And I'm really excited to see how filming my first tutorial in this room goes. So I think it's time to start cutting out all the pieces. So the fabric that I used had a very scraggly edge, so I decided to just put a little notch in one of the sides and rip the fabric all the way down. And this is both very satisfying and also functional because it gives us a really straight edge to work from when we're drafting all of our pieces. Then I folded my fabric in half and started to pattern out the dress, but I turned my back for 2 seconds and Sophie decided to steal my fabric a few times. But once your pieces are all cut out, here are all of the pieces you should have. So here are the first pieces of the bodice, and this is the bodice center and bodice side. And here is the last front piece, and this one I ended up editing the piece after I cut it out. So the dotted line is where I actually cut it. So you just want to make it a diagonal line that takes 1 inch off the bottom of the curved side. And then this is just the rectangle piece, that's the back piece. And then here is the sleeve piece. And sleeve pieces are almost symmetrical. One of the top sides should just slope slightly less, and that side will be the front. This piece I'm showing you guys is just a very long scrap piece that I put to the side that we're going to use to make little drawstrings later. And then this is the skirt back piece. So this piece is just a very gradual circle skirt. And then for the front, we're basically going to cut this piece into thirds, and you're going to cut out a center piece and 2 side pieces that overlap just slightly at the side seams for seam allowance. And I'll go ahead and show you their measurements as well. So this is the center skirt piece. And then this one here is the skirt side piece. And that is all the pattern pieces. Before we get to sewing up this dress, I want to take a minute and talk about today's sponsor, Squarespace. So Squarespace is a really cool all-in-one platform that helps you build up your online presence for your business. And there are so many different ways to actually use Squarespace. You can of course use Squarespace as an online store to sell your products online, or if you have an in-person business, Squarespace can also be super helpful by keeping your inventory and sale data in sync with your online store. And I've actually been working on building up my own website through Squarespace, and you can go check it out, linked in the description. And I will be updating it with more patterns that you guys can buy to sew along with my videos. And Squarespace just made the whole thing super simple to set up. So you guys can check out Squarespace for a free trial. And when you're ready to start building up your own website, go to squarespace.com/PaperStxrs to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and now it is back to sewing. And welcome to my new sewing space. So the first step on this project is going to be sewing together the front pieces that actually have a lining in them. So that is the center front and the side front. Look how big my new desk space is. She's gigantic. Okay. So we're going to take the center piece first, and then we're going to connect either side piece to it. So I'm going to lay the smaller sides together like this, and we're going to sew these 3 pieces together like this. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the lining pieces. And now you should have 2 pieces that look like this. So I'm going to put these to the side for a minute and grab the back pieces, and I'm going to take one piece and fold it in half, and I'm going to make a dart that goes in about 1/2 inch at the bottom and fades back into the fabric at the top at 7 inches. And basically you're just going to sew a little triangle right here. And now we have all of our back pieces. Now I'm going to take the front piece that we've already sewn, and I'm going to take one back piece, and where the dart starts, that's the bottom, so I'm going to connect one to either side of the front piece. now we're going to grab the top front pieces, and I have them folded together pretty side right now, and I'm just going to sew them together for about 2 inches along the bottom edge with the curve here. And now I'm going to open up this piece onto the back, and basically I'm just going to hem either edge here. So you're going to start on either side of the seam that we just sewed, and then you're just going to continue hemming that edge up all the way to the top. And we're going to sew down either side. And now we need to start gathering this piece up. So we're going to put 2 basting stitches starting from about here all the way across to the other side. And a basting stitch is just the longest stitch on your machine, so we're just going to do 2 about 1/2 inch away from each other. We need to gather this piece up so that it fits into the curve here. So I'm going to take the front piece and I'm going to pin these pretty side to pretty side, and I'm going to pin these centers together first so we know that they line up. And then I'm also going to pin this section here together because we don't really want to gather that side up. And now that those are pinned, we have these very big gaps here. So we're going to ruffle these until they fit in those spaces. So the way you ruffle is you take 2 of the basting stitches that are on the same side, and you're just going to pull them and they're going to gather up the fabric. And then once this is gathered, you can just go ahead and pin these pieces together. And now that these pieces are pinned together, I'm going to take the lining piece and I'm going to put it pretty side down, and I'm going to line it up with the matching front piece, and I'm going to move all of the pins so they go through all 3 layers. And now I'm going to sew through all 3 of the layers. And now when you turn this right side out, you should have this front piece sewn in, and it should already be lined in the back. And now you can also go ahead and just pull out all the basting stitches. Okay, so this looks a little crazy right now, so we need to clean it up. And obviously this piece is a lot longer than this piece here. So I think I'm gonna kind of cut this piece down so that it matches this side a little bit here. But you wanna make sure that when you're cutting it down, leave enough room to do a casing. I'm also going to fold these pieces in half while I do this to make sure that they end up being even. But we're not going to cut this all the way down because this is actually where the sleeve is going to start. And now I'm just going to fold over these edges twice to sew a casing. Okay, we've made some pretty good progress on the bodice, even if it looks a little insane right now. But to make it look a little bit more wearable, we're going to take this really long strip that we cut out next, and I'm just going to fold it in half and sew pretty close to the folded edge all the way down it, and then turn it right side out to make it into these little straps that we can push through that casing we just made. And now that we have this nice long piece, I'm going to cut it into 2 equal sections. I'm going to put a safety pin through the ends of one, and then I'm going to push it through that casing we made. Once it gets to the ends, I'm going to put a few stitches back and forth here to hold it in place. And now the bodice is starting to make a little bit more sense. All right, and now this is actually starting to look pretty cute. I'm really excited about it. And I think we're going to work on the sleeves next. But before we do that, I think we should take a quick break because I've been thinking about cutting curtain bangs on myself for 3 days. And I think it's time. This is honestly like such a terrible idea, but I've been just like thinking about it for like 3 days, and I've always wanted bangs, and I think curtain bangs is a good way to start, and I also just like needed to cut my like face framing bits because they're long anyway, so might as well go short. So I've never had bangs except for one time when I was like 4 years old and my mom gave me bangs, and apparently they look bad, and these are probably also going to look bad, but I want to do it anyway. So I got that triangle I know you're supposed to have, pretty sure. bit shorter in the front, but like they're like kind of a thing. I made them into more like grown out like actual bangs, but I'm not mad about it. They're so cute. Alright, here's to having hair constantly in my eyes now. Alright, well those are kind of cute, so I guess it's back to sewing. Okay, back to sewing. So I'm going to take our sleeve pieces and I'm going to fold them in half. And I'm going to sew their side seams together. And I'm also going to put a zigzag stitch down the raw edges because these sleeves are not going to be lined and this is going to help with the fraying. So now that the sleeves are sewn, we need to cut some armholes into this bodice. So like I mentioned, we're going to use this part of the bodice where it was a little bit taller here. But we still need to curve in and go back up towards the back section. And now before we attach the sleeve to the armhole, I actually want to finish up the back edge here. So I'm going to turn this inside out and put those edges pretty side to pretty side. And I'm going to sew right across these edges. And then when you turn it back to the right side, that edge is already finished. And now I'm going to take the bottom curve of the sleeve and I'm going to attach it to the curve of the armhole. So I'm going to line up the bottom seam with the center seam of the bodice. And then I'm just going to sew these together until we reach the top of the bodice. But I'm also going to make this seam allowance pretty big because we want to leave enough fabric on the sleeve to make a casing for some elastic. So I'm just going to make it extend a little bit farther than the seam I'm actually sewing. Now you should have two very big sleeves attached to the bodice. And now we're going to need to gather these up so that they actually fit on our shoulders. And the way we're going to do this is by taking this raw edge that goes all around the top of the sleeve, using this extra seam allowance that we have here. So I'm just going to fold this over twice and pin it around, making a casing that is big enough for my elastic to fit through. And I'm going to stop once we reach the part that connects back to the bodice. And I'm just going to sew all around this casing. I'm going to take our elastic, and again I'm going to put a safety pin on one end, and I'm just going to guide it through the casings. And now I'm going to try on the top and make sure that the sleeves fit comfortably, and then I'm just going to put a few stitches back and forth right here to hold the elastic in place. And now to finish up the top of the sleeves here, the last thing I'm going to do to the top is I'm going to stretch it, and then I'm going to put a straight stitch down the center of the casing. And this is just going to hold all of the ruffles in place and make it sit a little bit nicer. And now the tops of the sleeves are done and we have to finish up the bottoms. It's essentially the same process. I'm just going to make another casing with elastic along the bottom. So again, I'm just folding over and pinning the edges twice. But when you sew around this, you want to make sure that you leave a little opening so we can actually thread the elastic through it. And then we're going to thread the elastic through it, and once you bring them back together, I'm just going to use a zigzag stitch to sew the elastics together, and then I'm going to restitch the opening that we left to put the casing through. And now this is our basically finished bodice, so it's time to put it to the side and start working on the skirt. I'm going to put together the front of the skirt first. So I'm going to take the side pieces and connect either side to our center piece. I'm basically just lining up their side seams and sewing down them. But on the left seam of the center skirt, I'm only going to sew down it from the top for 16 inches so we can leave it open for a slit. Now we have the back piece here. And I'm just going to fold it in half really quickly and cut a 6-inch slit in the back, and that is where the zipper is going to go. So now we're going to sew the front and backs of the skirts together down either side seam. And again, I'm going to zigzag down all of the skirt seams because we're not going to be lining the skirt. And down the slit of the skirt, we still need to finish up the raw edge here. So again, I'm just going to do a little hem, and when we reach the top where we sewed it together, I'm going to go straight across and then sew back down the other side. to the very exciting step of finally sewing the bodice and the skirt together. So I made the bodice a little bit longer than I want, so I'm going to cut 2 inches off all the way around, and I just pinned all of the seams together to make sure everything lines up perfectly. And now I'm just going to pin the waistband to the bodice and sew these all together. And again, I'm going to zigzag down the edge to help with fraying. Now we need to finish up the back of the dress, so I'm just going to take an invisible zipper and just sew it in really quickly. And now all that's left to do on this dress is just to hem it. And here is the finished dress. I think that this dress turned out so beautifully. I've been in love with all of the Milkmaid styles, so I absolutely love how the front of it turned out. The only thing that I was a little disappointed with is with my rayon fabric. It was so silky that the sleeves really didn't have any structure to them, so they kind of fell over more than being like a really puffy sleeve. But I still think that the style turned out really, really cute anyway. And I do think it is a pretty good knockoff of the original dress. I also wasn't totally sure about this fabric choice at first because I really don't wear purple ever, but I actually really like how it turned out, especially with this design, because it gave it a very vintage feeling. And I just think it's such a darling little dress for summer. It's so cute. If you guys give this dress a try, you guys can always tag me on Instagram. I get so excited to see your creations. And just as a reminder, I post videos every Friday if you want to see more of my videos. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and I will see you guys in the next video.